I'm Reed Price. I'm the director of the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, and I want to welcome you to Something to Talk About. We have this program Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we are grateful for Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island sponsoring this program. They offer day stay respite programs, they have memory care, and they're in the process of building a new building, which will have both assisted living and independent living. So if you want to learn more about Fieldstone Communities, call 360-689-4314. Learn some information, schedule a tour, check out their location on Rolling Bay today. I also want to start by acknowledging that the Senior Community Center and this group are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically our good neighbors, the Suquamish tribe. We are grateful for their hospitality. We honor them, the people of the clear salt water. Today is Veterans Day, and we have an auspicious panel gathered in our dining room here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. And Ann Lovejoy, who helps coordinate a lot of these get-togethers, is going to get us started. Thank you, Ann.
We are delighted to be gathered here together to honor our veterans who have served us in many, many capacities over the years. And I would like to start by thanking all of you who showed up. This is really a great turnout. That's wonderful. And maybe I'd like to introduce Commander Gary Sakuma, who is the commander of the American Legion on Bainbridge Island. Do you want to say a little about this?
Yes.
This great group?
This is a good opportunity for us because this is Veterans Day, but we haven't had an opportunity to talk too much about our service and how that service affected our later life. So we have each other's back, and that doesn't necessarily happen in a peacetime army, or service. So this is a good opportunity. And so we're pretty well represented around this table here, except for the chief here. We are all Common High Post 172 on Bainbridge Island. So,
well,
Chief, would you like to tell us a little, introduce yourself? And
Well, I'm Domingo Almirol. I was born and raised here on Bainbridge Island. Left here in 1981 when I joined the service and didn't come back until 96 when I retired. So things have changed. Things have changed. The island became a city, and like Gary said, there are certain things that us as service members that we understand each other. There's a camaraderie that we have. You can look across the room and see a fellow veteran and do a simple thing as a nod, and they completely understand, where they see that USMC tattoo or something that triggers them off. So I'm very honored to be in the room with all of you, because this is just huge. We have juniors, service members out there that needs to see this, because they're going to be here someday. So I'm happy to be here.
great, thank you so much.
so I think maybe each one of us should introduce ourselves a little bit with a little biography of which service we're in, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Domingo's already done some of that, but Jim, why don't you?
the most senior man is right there.
Oh,
Yeah, you're guilty.
There you go.
Respect.
yeah,
Thanks. It's your turn. Tell us all about it.
It's easy, zigzag here. My name is Bill Beck. I am not a native islander, but I married one. And Captain Sutherland then. And it's been so long since I was I retired in 82. And somebody's in trouble there. Anyway, I remember that it was interesting starting. I joined in 62. I just went down and said, okay, take me. I didn't want to fight the draft board or anybody else. I just wanted to get it behind me. I didn't dream that I'd stay for 20 years, but I'm happy about the fact that I served, and I'm pleased to meet a lot of buddies right here and some of you Islanders that I've known and new people I can meet. So I hope that it's something that we can build on, get some more Legionnaires in the post and some of the younger troops maybe, and everything will get better and better as time goes on. Next.
Thanks, Bill.
Hi, I'm Alan Haugen, and I grew up down by the ferry dock in Hawley. And I sold newspapers in the late 60s and down at the ferry dock. And all the World War II veterans would come by and they'd always say, you better serve your country. So I got, taught that. And, in 1972, I graduated high school. And I had to do something. I had to get off the rock because it was, really boring. And, what are you going to do? And my parents says, well, you got to go do something. So I joined the Army and I went to Germany and I was a tank mechanic because on Bainbridge Island, there was hundreds of junk cars everywhere. And so the idea was you get a free car and you drive it through the Port Blakely Mill property. That I just had a cable. You just lift up the cable and drive it. So it's old logging roads. So we drive it until it breaks and leave it there and get another one. So we learned how to fix cars, and working on tanks was kind of quite an adventure to figure out how those things work. But they're really easy to work on, actually. So I spent 3 years and came back and found out that nothing had changed. So the rock was still the rock, but at least I had an adventure, saw the world, and there wasn't a whole lot of action in Germany, but there was some terrorists over there, and we had to be on guard duty with live rounds, and I thought, well, what the heck's going on? I wasn't used to that, but it was an experience. That's all.
I'm Picky Madayag. I've been here since day one. I just moved across the street, that's all I did. And the only time I was gone is when I went and got drafted into the service.
When was that?
Oh, I got drafted right out of high school. I graduated in 64. They picked my number right away in 65. And I spent the next 2 years in the Army.
It's really a minute.
Yeah, and then the nice part, when I was in there, when I went to the Bremerton, they says, well, we came up in threes, and my buddy was on that side of me, another guy was in the middle, I don't know who it was. The guy says, we would like one guy to go to the Marines and two go to the Army. And I wanted to go in the Marines, but my buddy Stickles leaned back and said, just went like this. So both at the same time, we took one step backwards. The guy said, thank you for doing that. So, yeah. That's it. Yeah. Still live across the street yet. Never moved. Yeah.
Hi, folks. I'm happy to be here. Happy it's Veterans Day. That's we should all be proud of that. And I know everyone here is. I joined the Navy right out of high school. And I think the reason I joined is had lots of friends, Spokane, Washington. But it seems Vietnam hadn't happened. This was a peacetime, but the draft was still going. And I really kind of resented my older peers. They would all go to college to get out of the draft. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I said, you should be going to college to learn something. Or, you know, I always felt all of us had an obligation to this country. And so people thought I was nuts. I enlisted for 4 years. It was good for me. I can't say it was all pleasant. It was, some of it was just downright fearful. Some of it was god-awful boring on a small ship. The Pacific Ocean is very big, and the food runs out, the milk runs out, but the camaraderie we had on that ship never ran out. If it wasn't for the crew on that ship, the ship would have been lost many a time. So I will always dearly remember that, and I'm proud I served. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Don.
All right, Karen. Well, I guess I went in the military not right out of high school, because I was on the delayed entry program. So, you know, when you are in high school, they try to recruit you. And, you know, they say, try to sign you up before you graduate. So I did, went on the delayed entry program and shipped out. You know, I signed up in the 80s, in 1980, and then shipped out to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. When I got there, I just shook my head and said, what did I do? What have I done, you know? And, you know, I was pushing up Fort Jackson, you know? And they shipped me right out to Korea. And and 2nd Infantry Division, and got over to Korea. And I was still shaking my head and saying, Karen, what have you done? And, you know, once I got in to what I would say, serving. Because I think when you're young, you really don't know what you're really signing up for. You put your little signature on the dotted line, but some of them do. Some of them know right then they want to serve their country. But I think it's a rude awakening for a lot of our young people as they go in and not really understanding, because some of them are running away from things, and some of them want a better life. So it's a process, but ended up over serving on the DMZ. And that was an eye opener when we were engaged with North Korea and South Korea over there. And we could hear, you know, the digging underneath our barracks and the different things that was going on. So it shifts your mindset. It really grounds you in understanding what you have actually signed up for, to serve your nation and to serve those, and being willing to lay down your life, even in the midst of the conflicts that there's a great understanding of your immortality, you know, when you are in those type of environments and not really, you know, facing it. But when you look around and you see all your comrades and you see all those that are there with you, and their dedication to support and serve one another, and keep one another safe is something remarkable, I would say. And so, you know.
Somebody on the
group is asking that we identify ourselves as we start to talk. Just,
All right, well, my name is Akuyea Karen Vargas.
there you go.
Sergeant Benton at the time, until I met this wonderful gentleman here, Mr. Handsome Vargas. Swept me off my feet and
Vargas.
Vargas swept me off my feet. And we've always had this thing, because, you know, I'm Army and he's Navy. And of course, they think they're elite. So with that, I'll pass it on.
How are you gonna follow that?
So Tom, would you prefer us to call you Tom or?
Yeah, Tom's easier than the other one. My name is Tamachi, but a lot of people flub over that one, so Tom is easier. Tom Vargas. I joined right after the Gulf War started in 1991. They were quite literally dropping bombs, and I was like, I had some other ideas. Okay, that's something I need to get involved with that. I served from 91 to 2006. Got a little heavy there at the end, and Big Navy decided I was too big, so I had to take my ball and go home. So I didn't wind up retiring. And in this room, I think I'm the baby veteran. I'm the youngest one. I got out probably the last, and I got out in 06. I was a Navy submarine radioman, which was awesome, but not all awesome, to be honest. Friends I got on the boats, anywhere on shore duty, these legionnaires that I met, you can't really quantify the bond. Just like the chief says, like you can look over and give a nod, and you just know. And it's not just men, it's women that have served too. There's women on submarines now, which for some of us, maybe not myself, but some, a little adjustment period. But it's like, hey, if you can do the job, good on you. Yeah, I don't care. I was a young 19-year-old, maybe 20, freshly married, like Insta family, just add dad. And I got to my first boat and deer in the headlights, because I was not prepared. I did not know. Nobody told me. And it took a minute to start to build up that second skin that a lot of us tend to have to develop, not just to survive, but to maintain yourself where you are in your environment. I was not somebody that saw any combat, so I don't have any frame of reference to be able to understand those that have. I only have my experience, and for mine was pretty rough, at least early on. Once you get a little senior and you get some time in, things get easier. But initially, and that was rough. Submarine life isn't easy. I missed every holiday on the calendar and the ones that aren't on the calendar. Football games, recitals, and dances, and PTA, and parent-teacher conferences. I missed all of those. And I got one of my other best friends. He's got kids, and I thank him pretty regularly, because his kids were at the ages when I got out that my kids were when I was in. So I had you don't often get a chance to do a redo, but all of the things that I missed with my own kids, I got to kind of see those things with his kids. So I'm like, hey, thanks for loaning me your kids so I could, get that in. But that was probably the hard part. I mean, leaving, I did 13 patrols. None of them were any easier than the first one, and none of them were any harder than the last one. But man, it sucked. But I would do it again.
Yep.
I'd do it again.
Well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I wanted out of the city. I finished Catholic school, and I wanted a new life. And I would go down to Detroit River with my dad and watch the ships going through all the time. We're about 2 miles away and wondering where their destinations are. Where are they going? Of course, it was all over the Horn of Michigan, all the way to Chicago, then all the way out to the East Coast to the locks of watching these war carriers and ships go through. So I got to hankering for the water. So living in a city is not a bundle of joy, it's survival, is what it is. And I wanted something different. And I knew there were things different because I had some beautiful, gracious relatives that would take us out of the city and we would spend time with them in the country to say, this is the real living. This is the real America. So went to service in 1962, Navy. I joined in Detroit and off to boot camp. From out of boot camp, I really wanted to get into aviation. So the school was closed, but I had been accepted into the aviation ADJ school, jet engine mechanic. But it was closed and had stayed closed for about 3 or 4 years. So during that time, I ended up in supply of naval aviation. So I was at 32nd Street for a year. Then from there, I went aboard ship in Yokosuka, Japan. And that was an adventure. And here I am on this World War II ship. And this World War II ship, I thought, whoa, a supply ship, cargo holds, a helipad on the back end, guns that you really aren't familiar with other than if you're using small sidearms or rifles or something like that, 3 and 5 inch guns. And so then I says, okay, so this is a new life at 2 o'clock in the morning, dragging the sea bag down the dock. Yeah. So off I go on a new life aboard ship in Yokosuka, Japan for over a year. And during that time, we steamed all up and down the China Sea. And we steamed with the aircraft carriers, which was really an exciting thing to me, because here you come out of where you were born and raised, and now you're up with these big bird farms, as we call them, aircraft carriers of the Pacific. And this is the early beginning of Vietnam. And so they were in service, flying different programs, different challenges at the time. And it was interesting because here now you are part of this 30 or 40 ships. And I'm just a city kid. And they said, you got the helm, you got the wheel, or you got the lookout, or you got the messenger, or you got a gun tub. And so you grow up real quick. You're a teenager and thinking is that, gee, this is what this is all about. So I was aboard ship and seen a lot there working with the carriers. And now we see today, and we've all gone and seen, you go see Top Gun and you see the thrill and the excitement, the roar and the banging and the crashing of aircraft going off. And that was always exciting, being a couple hundred yards away and watch them deploy daytime and nighttime both. It was exciting for the kid. So then I brought that ship back. I went out of service in Bremerton, Washington. We were there 18 months putting it out of service, and it was miserable. Nothing like working on a cold ship, putting it out of service, and it was going back to the Merchant Marines. So from out of there, I had no idea where I was going, and I was still in the air wing. And they says, you're going to North Island Naval Air Station, San Diego. I said, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, all right. And I had no idea what I would be doing there, because I was too late now to get into the ADJ school, jet engine mechanic, without shipping over for 4. And I really didn't want to ship over because I wanted to go on with my life. So I ended up in the Fleet Airborne Electronic Training Unit, back in supply and support in survival training. And that was really, really, really good. I mean, all the naval aviators who became POWs had to go through the training there and to share their lives with you. And one of the things was I had a chance to talk to John McCain when he was running for president here. He was here with our Secretary of State, Ralph Monroe. And I called and talked to him on the telephone, and it was the same camaraderie we have right here. You accept each other for what you are, because that's what you are, as a veteran. So I had a good time talking to him on the phone and Ralph both at the same time. And so then it was exciting to say is that I says, I took your picture, John, and I put your picture up on the bulletin board after we knew you were still alive. He says, you what? I said, we took your picture. I took your picture and put it up on the bulletin board with about 4 or 5 other guys who were already knocked down in that campaign in the South China Sea in Vietnam, in Cambodia. And he says, so you framed me? And I said, yeah, I did. I framed you. So as it was, we had a good conversation. It was nice to reach out to a fellow American, someone you've never really met other than when you went to SEER training. And it was, the SEER training took, as Gary knows, he had to go through it. SEER training is a tough bones to pick. And if you'll make you the best person you ever were, or the least person you ever want to be, because you are now camaraderie, you are brotherhood, and you're a sisterhood. So from out of there, I loved to roller skate. I loved ice skate. So I went to the roller rink at Bremerton, Chateau Roller Rink. And that's where I met my wife to be. And we've been married 57 years. And we're all over 21 now. Yeah. So, and I have 3 boys, 3 wonderful boys. And what the neatest thing is that we have this brotherhood right here. Like when I said to you, I said, hello, brother, this morning.
Yeah.
And there was nothing thought different about who we are. So there you go. So my life here on Bainbridge Island has been great. Pinky and I worked together for many years supporting the maritime service, the Washington State Ferries. And we know what it is to give all and beyond 24 hours a day. And let me tell you, Pinky's a good partner, day and night both. He cuddles warm. So, okay, well, I want to thank the people of Bainbridge Island and my fellow friends here, that how much you mean to all of us, day and night both. Even when we pass, we still have memories and footprints of who we are. Thank you very much.
And Jim, can you say your name, your full? Introduce yourself, your name.
James Walkowski, or Jim Walkowski.
Thank you.
Live on Bainbridge Island.
So I noticed that a number of you greeted each other that way, whether you'd met before or not. Like when Chief Domingo came in, all of you greeted him immediately. So I see that camaraderie is right there. But I also heard a number of you say you didn't really know what you were getting into. And I wonder what you would say to younger people about going into the service, or what you wish you had been told.
I got something. If you've never, go ahead, you're a senior, bud.
I can say that in most cases, you'll never know. And you can tell these young kids, I dose them a lot. But until they go experience this, I think you're never going to give them the emotion and the things. What did I get into that Karen talks about? But I would say what's exciting about us, and I'm Gary Sakuma. I was actually born in a relocation camp, concentration camp in Mendoza in 1944. My family moved back here because they had land here. Otherwise, it would have been somewhere else. But from 1947 until I graduated in 1962. But for me, it was interesting because at 12 years old, there was a man on an island that had a core field, had a Cessna 170, and his son, Forrest, did not want to fly. And so my father was good friends with Art Holcomb, and that was Forrest's father. So David, my older brother, and myself would go flying with Art. David didn't like to fly that much, and so I got to sit in the right seat, and I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. It was like flying like a bird. And so, and the other thing that Art liked to do is fish. So Forrest didn't like to fish, so I would go with him all over the peninsula fishing. And so I would say, a surrogate son in a lot of ways. But when I really got interested, it was when I went to Washington State University. Back then, all the land grant schools, every school that has a state after, Oregon State, North Dakota State, Florida State, they're all chartered by the federal government. And part of the thing that applies is what in the Legion we call Americanism. They believe in a lot of programs. And so when I went to Washington State, and I didn't know it at the time, every male, freshman and sophomore, had to be in ROTC. Now, there was 3 programs there initially: the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. I liked the little I could do overtime. So I took the Air Force. My sophomore year, they said, you could fly airplanes. And your junior and senior year, we'll pay you to fly and to continue school. So I graduated in '66 and went through what they call the pipeline. Went through pilot training, then you go to your upgrade schools. When you're in pilot training, you're selected, or you select what type of plane you want to fly. Back then, it was B-52s, 141s, C-7s, but I wanted to fly the F-4. They called it a double ugly because it was designed by the Navy, and it didn't have wings that were level. The wings. So it was. So there was a big rivalry always between the Navy F-4 pilots and the Air Force. But as you can see, I'm very short. I was short all my life. So everything that I did, I wanted to be the best at. And I think that may be one of the things that I would say led to my success, because I always had to prove myself. They were playing football at 128 pounds. Back then, you could get knocked unconscious, so to speak. You came out of the game just to go to the bench, but as soon as you went back in, that doesn't happen anymore for a lot of reasons. But to me, that was my badge of courage. And my folks would be in the stands, the wooden stands. They'd hear the clash of shoulder pads. I'd be down on the ground flat. They'd take me off. In place later, I'd be back in again. I think that's an important lesson for me, because during my time in the Air Force, 21 years or so, a few days, I were in 4 remote areas. And so we all talk about how the food was. Some cases, all we had were back then C rations and then eventually MREs. You can't make any of these things meals ready to eat. It's what MREs stand for. Tastes good. You try to make it, but it just dehydrated stuff. So you put water with it, boil it, and it still doesn't taste really good. But it did have, back then, it had always cigarettes, it had candy in there. So what happened to me, I became a smoker, obviously, and cigarettes were real cheap, $8 for a carton. And so you can't have a habit. And it's just by not chance that in our flight suit, in the right-hand pocket over here, is a zipper that you can put a pack of cigarettes in. And so it was interesting for me I retired in 1987. I was in a period of time where I went to Ubon, Thailand. Again, it was kind of a challenge because when we were over there in '69, it was not a good time to be over there. So we lost a lot of so-called friends. I still have some people that are missing in action, and I hope they're dead because if they aren't, they suffered until they did die. But it took me on to the rest of my life, which was for a lot of Air Force pilots, they went directly after their initial commitment to commercial airlines. So that's what I did in 1987. I went to United Airlines and flew for them until I retired at age 60, which was 2004. And you can say, why age 60? That was an arbitrary rule. Because we said, we can still fly. Eventually, the FAA said, you're absolutely right. They moved it up to 65. And again, another contention. I was 63 at that time when they did that, as I said, I want to go back to United. And so United said yes, but unfortunately the pilots union said no, because I was so senior. I was flying all the senior routes, 747, and so they didn't want us back, all us old people. So we didn't get to do that. I tell you, life gives you a lot of challenges, but you need to meet those challenges. Some of those remotes that I was on, it was not good places to be. And a couple of them I don't even talk about because it's classified still. But, and you're worried about it because you could get killed over there and never be accounted for because you were in a position where you weren't supposed to be there to start with. So, why am I in the American Legion, or why am I here, and why am I a service officer? Is to give back to fellow veterans. I think it's important. And there's a lot of things that lessons that we learn as we go along. And one is we have each other's back and we help each other. And we have that friendly rivalry between all the services. And we kid about it, but it's important. And I think everyone doesn't necessarily need to serve in the military, but we need to serve our country. And we don't have that now. I would say if you ask any kids, I would say the service or commitment to serving their country is not very high in their priority. And I think that's a problem that the adults have because they haven't instilled good, honest things about what to do. Honesty, loyalty, and commitment.
I think you're right. Jim, you have.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say what Gary said is, I think we're missing that in our society when young people don't service something. I don't care if it's the military, but I absolutely believe in alternate service. Our offspring should have an obligation to pay a little bit back for everything we have enjoyed. So I think we're missing the boat there. Saying that, so this is an over glorification of the military. I want to relay an experience that I had. I was younger than the ship I served on. The ship came out in 1941. I was born in 43. The ship was a lot rustier than I was, and it took all of us to keep it together. It was a small destroyer. And it suffered mightily in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. It's a terrible place to be on the sea. You're fighting sea snakes and people are shooting at you. It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be discharged before it got terrible for Navy and Marines and Army and everyone else in this country. And we can always debate about Vietnam, but I think most of us here are from that era. It was a terrible situation for particularly the people that were there. And when I came back, some people in this country didn't make it any pleasanter to be a veteran and serving in Vietnam. And I think that is changing. For the people that come back from the Gulf, I think they're treated better than people our age. I hope so, because it wasn't good. After the Navy, I went to WSU. Took me 4 years and 3 summer schools to get out. I worked my tail off, but I got out. And the people I lived with and associated knew I was a vet. They knew that the last vessel I served on was the USS Frankie Evans, DD 754. Fought in Okinawa, fought Pacific War. It happens to be the only capital ship that was sunk in Vietnam. It was coming back to deployment and it turned to port and an aircraft carrier turned to starboard. Well, a destroyer hitting an aircraft carrier, it doesn't even slow the aircraft carrier up. And the ship sank, and it sank on the day before my graduation at WSU. And people came running into our room and said, "Jim, you got bad news." And it was terrible news. Investigation, who knows who was wrong, the aircraft carrier, the destroyer. And maybe it doesn't matter, but the carrier went right through the middle of the ship. That's where I would have been sleeping, and it was at night. I would have been asleep and dead now. And so you'd think that the Navy always does something right. They don't do everything right. No service does, and no occupation does. But 2 years later, I had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., and I wanted to see the Vietnam Memorial. I had a list of people that were still on the ship, and I knew they would be on the wall. So everybody goes with paper and finds the name. There's a directory. I found there was 39 lost their lives on the ship. The only thing that was left was the stern, so everyone ran to the stern. I knew that some of the 39 would have lost their life. None of them were on the wall, and I didn't understand what was going on. In their infinite wisdom, the Navy said they were returning to Vietnam from a repair job in Australia. They were 8 miles from the border of the war zone when the ship downed. So these guys at that time that had served probably their whole career sweating and getting shot at and eating lousy food, never got the honor of being on the wall. And it was wrong. It was just wrong. And it still is wrong. Lots of bills in Congress that never got a hearing on it. So that's one case that the Navy made, I believe, a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
My brotherhood deserved better than that. Thank you.
I would like to say is, I think the youth, and I've spent 45 years working with youth, of teaching them how to use firearms. If you're gonna drive a car or you're gonna use a firearm, you need to know them both. You may not love either one of them, but the youth that you worked with, if you kind of think about it, a lot of us were in the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. So you had that early preparation of organization. And serving our country 2 years won't hurt anybody. And it actually makes you a better American. I don't care what race, creed, or color you are, it makes you a better American. Our blood is all red. Some 80,000 men and women have not come home from our war. They're not home no more. They're someplace where they're with God. So our children need to serve.
Yes.
And until we wake up and push, you need to do this. Make one more step forward. It's like when a ship rolls to starboard, will we come back? And if the bell rings, you're not coming back, because that's the turnover time. And when the bell doesn't ring no longer, it's turnover time.
No.
So having a camaraderie, like I said yesterday to Gary, I says, our seniors to us out of the wars, World War I and II, have this building we call Post 172. They prepped it for the future. They prepped it for us. Now we're prepping it for the future again, no matter what race, creed, or color you are. And I really meant that. And you know I did. Yes. So I think sharing with each other. One day, Pinky and I went down to the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It was traveling. You remember that? Tough. So here we are, looking through here, and we found one of my relatives. Okay? And then this guy walks up to Pinky and I, and he is a docent. And he says, "Can I help you guys?" And we says, "Well, yeah, a little bit." And he did a little bit of digging into Pinky, because Pinky served in country, I served on the sea. And Pinky says, "Yeah, this is blah, 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 blah." And so anyway, it came out to where when the shoes hit the grass or the boots hit the grass, trying to say this without falling apart here, is that Pinky was calling this guy in for direct rounds over their head. Remember that, Pinky? Yeah. Yeah. And so to say, we did it. You may not have gotten everybody out, but you got out to be here today. Thank you, bud.
I'd like to add to prepping our future and preparing our young people. I think it should be a requirement even for them to graduate high school to at least go through basic training, to prepare them and give them some skills, some discipline, some understanding when a 9/11 or any kind of domestic or any kind of situation, that they have some tools on how to respond. One thing that, all of us had to go through basic training. We had to go through AIT. We had to go through basic leadership training. We had to go through primary leadership training. All of those things are wonderful tools to prepare our young people. If there's ever any conflict in this nation, that at least our children know how to protect themselves, how to move in those situations, have the tools and understanding how to be able to respond. And I think that's a life-giving skill to our young people, to be able to know what to do in case of emergencies. It's just like in school when they say we're doing an earthquake drill, so they know how to get under the table and they know what to do in case something happens. Now they're preparing our kids for school shootings, what to do, how to respond. But we're not preparing them for anything in life that they might encounter. And I believe basic training, at least that they have to have basic training, whether they serve the 2 years or not, to be able to have that type of requirement before they even graduate high school. And I've always believed that.
Survival skill.
Yes,
Survival
just
skill.
survival skills.
Chief, do you want to say something to that?
I like the idea,
Yes.
but we have to change the mindset of the generation now.
Yes.
Because when I was growing up as a child here on the island, I knew I was gonna wear a uniform. I just didn't know what uniform I was gonna wear. I started out in the Navy as an aviation electrician. Thought I'd go see the world. They sent me to Whidbey Island. What the hell?
That's welcome.
Lucky.
So I cross-decked over and I ended up in the Marine Corps and, you know, I was like, well, you're gonna go to supply. I thought, okay, I can do this. And then they sent me to an infantry unit and the battalion commander said, everybody has to do some time in a line company before they go to their primary MOS.
Yes.
They made me a machine gunner. I never left. Thought that was the greatest thing in the world, carrying around this big rifle that shoots big rounds. But, you know, I've been wearing a uniform a lot after I retired, blew my back out, stuff like that. I'm now the chief of police for the Port Gamble-Squamish Police Department. Been there 3 years. Before that, Squamish for 15 years as their deputy chief. This December, I hit 24 years in law enforcement. So you're right, we have to build those skills for them to grow up instead of them going with the handout going, I rate this. No, you don't. You know, you have to earn it. I earned this Eagle Globe and Anchor. You earned your rockers, you earned your chevrons. I see a lot of national defense ribbons on here. We earn those. And I think that the younger generation needs to know that it's not about handing out. It's not about what you can give me. You know, there's a give and a take. You have to give a little bit to receive a little bit. It's not just give me, give me, give me. It's like talking to the kids right now. Yeah, I just hired an officer. Holy crap, they weren't even born when I retired. You know, but it's a different generation. You know, we were just talking about it at the office that you get in, when I was a new officer, the first thing you got in, put in your car was a road map so you can get around.
Yeah.
First thing they put in there is a GPS unit.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we're going to pen and paper, guys. You know, because what happens? You know, they're not prepared. They rely on this to say, oh, Google, tell me this, instead of going and doing and reading it, researching it, and then compiling it into your own report. You know, they're doing a lot of cut and paste. Do they do any research? No, it just looks good. So we have to somehow change the mindset of this young generation. I don't think you're gonna get them to go into the service for 2 years, because remember, we are a volunteer force. But the ones that volunteer, God bless them.
Amen.
You know, they took on a responsibility to protect our nation. Now, you have to look at the other side that didn't join the service, and they'll protest and they will do whatever they want to say and do. But remember, guys, that all of us, what we did in the service gives them the right to, you know, to voice their opinion. Otherwise, we would be that country that you decide, I'm gonna voice my opinion against the government, and you're gonna disappear. There's a lot of freedom here, and we, as soldiers, sailors, and Marines, have given them the right to do that. It's up to them.
I think we've lost the value of being an American.
I think
We understand it. We know what
we do, but you know, I was also, you know, I was brought up very strictly.
Yep,
And if I needed a crack on my behind, I got it.
yep.
But if I needed a pat on my back, I got it too. Pinky is one of my elders, and his son, we're best friends. We
Yeah.
grew up together.
And I'm glad that you said your elders. What about this generation that does not honor their elders?
Well, I think that comes down to just showing them what's right and what's wrong. You know, that's a really tough one to learn and to teach. When I turned 55, it was funny because somebody came up to me and says, "Uncle, can I go get your lunch?" And I'm like, "No, I'm old enough to still get it over there. I'm strong. Leave me alone." And then somebody says, "You know, you're an elder now." They're just doing tradition. You know, they're being respectful. And I said, "Oh, God, okay. Yes, honey, go ahead."
Yes,
You know,
yes.
it devastated her because I was like, why are they getting me my food? You know? That it's something that we have to go and we have to start somewhere. And I think we've lost the ones that are older, but we still have the younger ones that are still in grade school that we can start to mold and show that, you know, there's something to it. Showing up at their school on Veterans Day. I do that down at Suquamish Elementary. You know, the kids they would sing, and, you know, I just love it. Those they warm my heart. And then you'd walk the hall and they would line the hall and they'd have their hands out, so you'd have to slap everybody's hand as you walk down there. That's the generation we need to restart with, because the other ones have kind of stuck in their ways. So we need to figure out where we can try to restart this whole thing. And you're right, you know, I think we've lost a generation.
Oh, we have lost.
But it's gonna take something really bad to get that generation
Like
back.
9/11 was a shock to every one of
It was a big
us.
shock to all of us.
Yep,
But, you know, do we need something as serious as that to go and kick somebody in the butt and say, remember, you live in the country of the free?
I'm free.
Yep.
I remember President Kennedy saying, "Do not ask what your country can do for you.
And freedom is not free.
Ask what you can do for your
No.
country."
Right.
And we don't hear a lot of that anymore. Alan, I think you had some.
I was raised by people that were World War II veterans that were kind of oppressive to the young kids. And they always says, as soon as you're 18, that's when you can start, that's when things begin, you know. And so always, you know, I was always thinking when I turn 18, what am I going to do? So on my 18th birthday, I joined the Army. And I was over in Seattle with 200 people in their underwear. And all these guys said, "Hey, guys, shut up," you know, and pull down your pants and your underwear and bend over. And when we tap you,
Keeps on giving.
and I said, what the heck's going on here?
That was universal. In fact,
So anyway, when I was 18, you got to do something. I mean, sink or swim. I mean, you're getting thrown in the water. What are you going to do? You know, and kids need to know that is when you're 18, you better do something, you know, and that's what everybody needs to have. You know, there's the Peace Corps, and there's AmeriCorps, and there's the Army, Navy, Marines, Merchant Marines, all kinds of stuff to do that serves your country. Even picking up trash off the street, you know, that serves your country. And you know, the kids need to know that. And then as soon as they're 18, you need to do it and get it over with. And that's what I did, and I'm glad. You know, they taught me a lot. The Army taught me a lot about America. And, you know, because they taught me, I said, what is this military? You know, is it civilians? No. Is it the government? No, not really, because, you know, you've been selected by the members of your community to serve. I joined, but that draftees got selected. And so they're kind of like elected. They're like elected. So it's like, the military is different. It's like civil rights. You don't necessarily have civil rights. You got the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is different, but they do treat you really good. There was something amazing, on my 18th birthday in Seattle there, getting checked, inspected, detected, injected, you know. And they says all the draftees have to go over here. And those are called USs. That's the designation for a draftee, is a US. And they called them Uncle Sam's. And they treated them really good. I thought, what's so special about these guys, you know? And they're draftees, you know, and if you join your RA, regular Army, and if you're a National Guard, that's an NG, and if you're, I don't know, but they had different designations and stuff. But, it was very interesting to learn about America because they don't teach this stuff in school. You know, they teach you, in the Army to be an ambassador to the world.
Yes.
And treat everyone as if they are Americans with civil rights. You know, and if they start shooting at you, well, they're supposed to shoot back. So that's all.
This has been amazing. Thank you all so much. I would love to do this again. I hope that, you know, we can have more conversations like this because I think a lot of people never hear this talk, never have any idea. And maybe kids hearing more, like, you know, we're putting these videos on our website. Grandparents are going to listen and maybe they'll sit their grandkids down and say, I have something for you and me to do for the next hour. We're going to listen to this conversation, right? That's one really great way we can reach out as seniors, as elders, as grandparents, as helping build a different elder culture that does explain to the younger people how they can give back and why they should. I think that
before we close it out, we have to let them understand that freedom is not free.
Yeah.
We have sacrificed and laid down our lives to serve this country. And many of our comrades have not come home. And families have been torn and sacrifices have been made and for the freedoms that they enjoy. And so we have to help our young people in this next generation to understand that all the liberties that they have, someone has paid for that. They have been paid for by the sacrifice of the veterans and those that have served this nation. And that's a strong message that I think we have to continue to have them to understand, to hear, and keep it at the forefront that yes, you have your civil rights and you have your human rights and you have all your liberties and your freedoms, but somebody paid for that. And those are the things we need to be able on Veterans Day when we have these type of conversations, that we have to center it and help them to understand that there's been much sacrifices that have been made for the freedoms they enjoy.